Hello, Joakim.
Good morning, beautiful.
Morning, man. So, what do you want to talk about today?
I don't know. I have about 15 minutes until the food arrives, so let's try to do something
Sorry.
useful. All good?
Okay. So,
Uh,
I guess.
I'll host a room in TTS, and we
Uh,
can talk while we try interactions. So basically, um, I wonder if it makes sense to change the rules of the stack and because if we are going to allow foretold cards to respond to other foretold cards, which I think is going to be important for the game to feel nice and interactive, then we basically have a normal stack anyway.
yeah.
So that's what I'm contemplating right now.
So, there's some there's some argument to be done for implementing it, and there's some arguments to be done for not implementing it. So, a good question that I was thinking about yesterday, if I can just open the card list for the VOD. How many cards actually have foretold on them, where foretold actually matters?
Well, um,
Now, there's obviously no units unless we put it on Infiltrator, which is something we discussed earlier, to get around certain things, with Infiltrator not really being applicative because people can just activate the knowledge card in the response, considering stuff like Sayer or Corrupt Ping, and etc. etc. So
yeah.
currently, in terms of prophecies, there are none. In terms of knowledge cards, there is Spiritual Transcendence, and there's Anticipation, and Anguish, and Vanguard, and Ping.
Rune inscription and solicitude as well, I think.
Oh, yep, my bad.
All good. So, but on both on Nana's anguish, on solicitude, on mostly, I guess, Vanguard. So the idea is for it to make sense, it has to Vanguard has to proc when a prophecy resolves, not when it is played.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
because currently you can't
it does
flip it in
nothing.
response to an opponent playing something because then it does nothing.
Yeah, and that is not how I intended it to work. And I guess maybe when we put foretold in, we might have had some other ideas about how it works. But yeah, no, it's definitely intended to punish a player when they, in response to them playing a prophecy.
Mm. So currently, the only real thing I see, because yeah, it might be good on Vanguard if we make it actually be interactable, right? With a card that's already on the stack. But then
Mm.
again, then we can't have the stack resolve instantaneously then, I think, for this particular argument. Right? Because if you want to smite something and I activate this, then in terms of what me and Jonas were talking about earlier, um, there's then going to be a very distinct like timing phrase there in terms of the rule book that might actually just complicate things when reading it to be able to
Yeah,
understand it, because you would have to like specifically explain that the stack currently goes like, okay, I don't want to take an action, do you want to take an action, right? And if
yeah,
you take an action, then it goes back to me, and that will keep going, but you would still have to explain that. So for that, it doesn't really change anything.
yeah. I
um
think it might not. And it also another question is where in the stack will afterlife effects happen? When will the afterlife effects happen? That's another
so
tricky thing.
the way that I view it as a predominantly Magic the Gathering player is that any effect that does any form of action, unless specifically stated otherwise on the card, or is an innate trigger of something happening, which means Longhouse, for example, that unit gaining armor until the end of the turn, for me, that doesn't go on the stack. But anything that triggers and has a impact on both players, for instance, Vanguard, would go on the stack, in my opinion.
You mean activate? Oh no, okay. So the effect of Vanguard, not activating.
So
Vanguard.
the way I look
but
at it is,
where would it go though on the stack? Would it go to the top of the stack so that it's the first thing that resolves, unless another opponent reacts to the effect?
So let's say that I play Smite, and Vanguard has been reworded to actually say resolve instead of play, so that it's clear that it happens after the card has gone in the stack and then is finished on the stack, which means it's resolving from the stack. So then they lose it, right? So the way that would work is, okay, you want to smite my unit. I flip Vanguard. Then Vanguard triggers, and Vanguard's ability then goes on top of the stack after smite. Or before smite, I mean.
But it can't go before smite if it triggers when smite resolves.
That's true. So then smite would resolve, and then a new stack will happen.
Yeah. Or the effect would be put on top of the current stack, right? Or
no, either it can't. You make a very good point there, because it can't go on the stack before smite is done resolving. Huh. So the way it's currently worded is actually probably better. Because but then you just have to flip it preemptively instead of responsively.
Yeah,
and
but
if you flip it preemptively,
nerf the card.
No, because currently, right, if my opponent wants to place, for instance, blood, right, and they have 6 knowledge or 6 insight, they want to play blood, then they go down to 5, right? So that then their next blood, for instance, can't resolve. Or a better example might be, let's see here. If your opponent wants to double sack an eye for 4 gold, but only have 2 knowledge, then they can't resolve the second one because they will only have 1. So it depends on how you want the card to function, because if we want to reword it to resolve...
I want it to work like that, but I also want you to be able to use it as a surprise. Like, basically, the way you explain it is exactly how I want it to work, but in addition to that, I also want to be able to play it in response to someone play a prophecy and still punish them.
That's going to be... I think that has to complicate it, and that really depends on how we want to phrase it, depending on how the stacks, or how the stack ends up being implemented into the game. Because as it currently is, I think the only way that you can achieve both results is to say, after your opponent plays a prophecy, or if a prophecy is already on the stack, they lose 1 and you gain 1. Then you could still flip it, because the prophecy is on the stack, which then the trigger goes on the stack, right? And then it becomes after they play it. But you would have to implement the word stack in there, and then you would have to explain it very precisely in the rules.
Yeah, that is
probably with Vanguard as the example in this case.
Yeah, I do want to have clear examples anyway, but I also want to avoid using the word stack for some stupid reason.
No, I don't think it's stupid. I think it's very good to avoid the word. I just don't know how to...
I don't know.
Wait, after your opponent plays a prophecy, or if your opponent is currently playing a prophecy, that would then imply that they're currently playing it, and you're responding to it. That could also work, but it's a little fiddly.
So if your opponent... Okay, wait. Let's see. When your opponent...
So it would still say, after your opponent plays a prophecy, right? So that's the current wording. But then just add on to that, after your opponent plays a prophecy or is currently playing a prophecy, they lose 1 knowledge and you gain 1 knowledge.
Yeah, but are they currently playing it though? If you use it
It
as
that's why I said it becomes fiddly, right?
yeah,
Because it's
yeah,
then it becomes up to interpretation, and then you would still have to give a clear example of it in the rule book.
yeah. I'm wondering if
Because a lot of these things that have issues tied to them, I think could be very delicately solved by adding rulebook 2.0 that isn't actually a rule book, but more of like an expansion on it regarding just
like FAQs.
yeah.
Yeah, I so
So then players don't have to read it once they start getting into the game, but when they actually have played the game for a couple of times and they start asking these questions, then they can go over to the FAQ and then look at some of these interactions that they might have questioned.
yeah. So there are a few thoughts I have about that. First, I do want the rules to be very clear, and that requires more writing, of course, and more examples,
Mm.
which is okay. Um, I don't. I want to prevent having an FAQ online or like on the website or whatever. I want people to have everything they need in the box.
I would
But
print like another one, but
yeah,
that's again
yeah,
it's more expensive.
it's more expensive, but it's quite cheap, I think, to just add a few pages.
Hmm.
But looking at a 20-page rule book, a lot of people will just not even pick it up because they're like, well, this is too much. I
Does
I
the rule
rare
book for is it 20 pages currently?
16.
Oh, that was Karius.
Well, no, 14, but yeah, with the front page and the back side, it doesn't feel like that, right? Because it's actually
Okay,
all
so
pages are pretty light except for the priority and responses in the timing
so
page.
we might look at it like it's a 14-page document, right?
Yeah,
But the first page or the first 2 pages isn't really anything in terms of explaining the rules.
sure, but that's beside the point because people won't even open it if they see that the rulebook is too thick.
Yeah, yeah, but then maybe do we need this first page?
Um, so yeah, no, okay, good thought. I also thought about scrapping having like a front page at all. Or it could be like a half front page, and then I could fit in the contents
Mm,
on the front page. Then we could basically scrap the entire page one.
mm,
The credits I could make much smaller and somewhere else.
yeah.
Uh, the whole lore thing I anyway wanna redo. I'm not happy with it,
Mm.
uh, and preferably shorter as well. So yeah, we could cut like maybe 1 or 1.5 page or something like that to make room for
Does
other stuff.
does the glossary and game components need to be in the rule book as well?
The game components, yes. The glossary, maybe not. The glossary is anyway kind of odd how it is placed. I'll probably just try to work that into the rules somehow.
I mean, obviously this is a lot of speculations until we get a finished product or closer to it, right? But a lot of these things I think can be shortened down
Yeah,
very effectively. Like on
yeah,
page 7
If-
we're missing like half a page that could be used because we have
yeah,
so much white space and
yeah. No,
so on and so
that is
forth.
one I wanna like rework um, the text and everything that I want in the page, and then I will
Mm,
need to have someone who's actually knows graphic design, and they kind of be in charge of putting it in and making it work
mm,
because uh, it looks pretty good, but it still looks amateurish. It doesn't look like a fancy rulebook,
mm,
and the reason is because I mean That was always my plan to do it, but I first want to make sure everything is done because it's quite expensive.
So back
also on
go
page
on.
3, for example, we could cut down four lines, just removing. It says on the game setup, determine the first player.
Yeah.
That could be done.
Yeah.
Then 2. Like I can get
Yeah.
rid of a lot of text.
Again, I will happily go over the entire rule book and some of the things in there at some point when we have more time, and probably more players to get involved as well.
Yeah.
So
I really appreciate it.
We got super off track from my question of how many knowledge cards actually need foretold.
Yes. Okay.
So if we go back to that question, does spiritual transcendence need foretold?
It either it needs foretold or it needs to. No, I kind of think. I think so. Yeah, because let's say you smite, then I want to open this in response, right? So that this, so I get my insight. Otherwise, it wouldn't feel so good. Yeah. Okay.
So why does it need foretold in that circumstance? Foretold only means that it doesn't pass priority.
Yeah, okay. So I think I'm still stuck in the old way of thinking when we were experimenting. Or okay, we never even got to experiment with it. We just talked about experimenting it. I updated the cards and then I don't know what happened. I got busy with work and we kind of forgot about it. But the idea was that everything resolves unless it's responding. Okay. Our food just arrived.
Okay. So the only thing I can see for this particular example is if you want a double smite. After the first smite, I can flip. If you smite again, then I won't get anything.
Yeah, no, that's super inefficient either way. Like that's not the. So okay, if we go by the way we have been currently playing, which I think is maybe what we're gonna circle back to, then no, it doesn't need anticipate. It doesn't need foretold. Anticipation, on the other hand, does because.
So just before
anticipation has to resolve, so you then can play a prophecy. Otherwise, it feels bad.
So I can only see 2 cards in the entire game that actually need it. Anticipation and ping. That's it.
How about rune inscription?
Why?
Let's say you want to open Ards.
Yeah.
Okay, no, Ards is maybe a bad example because it triggers at the end of your turn.
At the start of your turn.
Sorry, at the start of turn. So let's say
fortified walls is an example, right?
Yeah, let's say fortified walls. Okay, no.
I flip it, then you have a chance to respond. Does that matter?
No, actually, I don't think it does.
Because if you respond to this, that's fine.
Yeah, no,
and then if you're not going to respond to this, or if you can't, you're just going to respond to my walls, right?
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, you're right. We changed up these active player actions, non-active player actions, and the passing priority. Like this whole priority rule in general, it was also implemented just a couple of days or weeks before you came to play. So, and you have by far played the most since all of this. And I kind of forget about things sometimes. But I gotta get going.
Yeah, I'll hopefully see you after dinner.
Yeah, it won't be after dinner, but maybe after the kids are asleep.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
See ya.
Thank you. Bye-bye.